All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's Analytics in Action, our how-to webinar series from Association Analytics. We will give it just a minute for everyone to get logged on here. Our fun question for the day, since today's topic is about spring cleaning, we're curious if anyone here, has particular deep cleaning items you wait for to do in the spring, what those are. And then also I would love what you do to motivate yourself, because I need some tips. I am not motivated to do any spring cleaning. Attic.
The attic. Wow. I don't even go up there.
Oh no, me neither. That's where all my Christmas stuff goes in.
Not the garage, the garage.
Garage, yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, change it to everyone.
Peg people, we were just talking about that. I'm like, I might just need to do that. Basement, garage. We don't have basements in Florida.
It's pollen off, yeah, that's a big one.
Anybody do windows, like exterior windows or like baseboards or stuff like that? Baseboards, yeah.
Baseboards. I was thinking all my blinds and baseboards.
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's get started. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Katrina McAfee. I am the senior marketing, actually my title is changed, excuse me, Director of Growth Marketing. Thank you, fancy title. And we are talking about spring data cleaning today. So today your hosts are Bill Conforti, SVP of Strategy and Solutions, and then Greg Pollock. And we have to update this slide because he is now SVP of Sales. Congrats. So two of these guys have been in the association and tech industry for 20, 30 years combined. And know tons about data processes. You guys are in good hands here to talk about data quality and data cleanup, which is our topic today. So I'm going to turn it over to, I think, Greg.
That's going to be Bill today. We're changing it up. Bill. All right. So look, so today we're talking about data quality. No mess, no stress. I don't know about that, but we're going to kind of take a bit of a different spin on it. It's not going to be one of those things we're just going to advise you that, hey, look, data quality is important and you have to do it, which of course everybody already knows. We're going to talk a little bit about psychology today, right? So we're going to talk about the idea of starting fresh in the springtime. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it, and let's go ahead and jump in. So Greg, what do we have coming up?
I'm really excited about this one, actually. Some of you might have met Rachel Mace from the A2 team. She's on our product side there. She's going to be joining us to talk about learning data. We've recently done a deep dive into data that different LMSs can provide. And we've sort of reorganized the way we think about learning data and how to blend that together. So if you're interested, you can scan our QR code. I'm sure Katrina will send you an email. Go to our website, click the link there, and join us for that one coming up next Wednesday. What are we covering today? We're going to do some intros. We're going to get your feedback in our poll section. We'd love to hear from you in the chat. If you have any questions or any comments as we go through, we will be monitoring the chat. If you want to remain anonymous, you can use the Q&A feature and ask a question as well. We're going to talk, sort of as Bill said, not about just general data cleanup. We think you should do that, but sort of this annual cleaning that we go through. What is this big mentality shift we can go through to think about our data and really clean it up to best serve our needs? We're going to be talking about those everyday cleans. What are the things and how do you stay motivated? How do you stay on track? Not just from a technical standpoint, but also from a project management standpoint. How do you actually do this and do it successfully? And you don't have to take our word for it today. We interviewed a lot of different customers and organizations who do data cleanup, and we said, hey, how do you do this? And we're going to incorporate a lot of their thoughts and nuggets as we go through. We'll summarize everything. We'll give you some handouts and some takeaways you can use yourself to do this if you want. And obviously Q&A. So ask us questions as we go through. Who are we? We are Association Analytics. We do fun stuff like this. So if you're not familiar with us, we do everything from integrations, data lakes and data warehouses, building visualizations. Our newest mission, we got to update this, is really helping you generate insights and take actions. That's our real mission right now. Is we've got all the data in one spot. How can we start leveraging that data in new, fun, and creative ways? But to be frank, you got to have good data in your data warehouse. So today we're going to be talking about making sure that that data is high quality and it serves the needs of your organization.
All right. Thanks, Greg. We're going to go to our poll question now. We're going to have 2 quick poll questions. These are really easy ones, right? You don't have to just have to say whether you agree or not. So dirty data significantly reduces our ability to achieve business goals, right? And so we kind of emphasize the word significantly there. This one's real easy to answer, so let's try to get 100% participation on this.
Let's go poll. Significantly reduces our ability to achieve our business goals. That's a big one.
All right. Looks like inching up there. Got almost 90% participation.
We're gonna see any don't knows in this.
We have one don't know. All right,
All right.
so let's quickly review. So really quick, if my math is correct, 86% of us either agreed or strongly agreed, right, that dirty data significantly reduces our ability to achieve business goals. 1% don't know. 6% were neutral, neither agree nor disagree. And we had 2 people, 6% said they strongly disagree. So if you strongly disagree with this, I'm not sure you're in the right webinar. I'm kidding, but would like to hear from you, right? What is it that you're doing? Comments throughout would be really appreciated. Can kind of for the benefit of the group, right? So
well, I sort of wonder there, is it that they don't have dirty data or that they're just pressing forward and not letting it get in their way?
maybe they watched our webinar about not being fearful of dirty data. Okay, so let's go to our next one then, really quick. Second poll question. Our association spends enough time on data quality, right? Enough is kind of subjective, right? We've got a few agrees. Don't have any strongly agrees yet. Anyone strongly agree? So maybe, Greg, maybe they don't spend any time on it, but yet it somehow doesn't significantly influence or harm their business. Neil spends enough time, but they could do it better, right? They could be more strategic, and who couldn't?
I think
right?
today we're talking about the strategic part. That's really where we want to help you focus.
All right, so let's so we got 90% participation again. Let's look at the results for those that are watching on the recording later. So in this case, we have a little over 60% that either strongly disagree or disagree, right? That their association spends enough time. We got a lot more people in the middle here. So we got to almost 30% that say they neither agree nor disagree. No one doesn't know, doesn't have an opinion, and no one strongly agrees. So any what do you think, Greg? Any surprises on either of these?
A little bit of surprise on the first one with our 2 people there that said it's not a problem for them. But on this second one, I think we all sort of understand how much time we spend, and we could always spend a little bit more. But I would say, to Matt's point, is it the amount of time we spend, or is it how we spend our time doing it? And I think that really is our focus today, is how do we spend better time doing it? Not necessarily spending more time, but let's say we want to just change the way we approach it so we're more successful when we do it.
Yeah, so of course, maybe it's not the people on this call, but it's our organizations more generally, so just, and these are totally consistent with, with what we see in, hundreds of associations that we talk to all the time. We know that that dirty data is a problem, right? How big of a problem it is maybe there's room for some discussion on that, but we know we're not spending enough time and effort on it. But despite that, we can't really motivate ourselves, maybe, or at least our colleagues in our organizations, to really address that. So I want to dive into that a little bit, right? The idea of motivation, right? What's the psychology behind all this? So starting with the call to action. So let's talk about that, Greg. What do you think?
So let's think about this as a project manager. A lot of times this is the IT department running it, and we're sort of announcing to the company-wide organization that we're going to do some data cleanup. We're going to work on some data quality. Which one do we like to pick? Is it, hey, exercise helps you live longer. The sooner you start, the better. Is that a good call to action? Or is it going to be something like, exercise helps you live longer, start 2023 right with a renewed commitment to your health? Which one of these is going to be a better call to action, do we think, for our team members to exercise to be healthier? Is it the just, hey, you should just start right away? Or is it the let's pick a date, let's get started on this specific time frame?
Second one, says Neil. Anybody else? Anybody like the first one better? Right, start no time like the present, right?
I mean, you hear that a lot, right?
All right, okay. So some of the psychology here is related to this concept of a fresh start, right? So if you just say that it's going to help you live longer, it's kind of open-ended. Sooner you start, the better. Well, yeah, we know that, but that's like something big. It's like my whole life. How do I, what's the difference if I start tomorrow, if I start the next day, the day after that, right? I have a long time, right? And the other one gives me this sense of a fresh start in 2023. There's a temporal element to it. There's a time frame. There's a landmark that I can attach to. And we're going to talk about a few studies that relate to this. But the idea is we kind of know, intuitively, right, that there's some psychology there that if things are going off track, and we know that they are, right, we have this problem, it's causing harm to our business, but we're not really doing much to fix it, right? That's kind of what we established in the polls. So we have this problem. And when that is the case, very often you need a fresh start, right, Greg?
So this is all about motivation, especially when things aren't going well. If we're not spending as much time or quality time on business, let's hit the pause button for a second. Let's prioritize, let's strategize, and let's take a fresh start and a fresh approach at this. And let's really make sure that we align our priorities with our goals. We really have a tactical approach to this, not just sort of like a, hey, it's Wednesday, we're cleaning up our data again, right? This is a whole reason to really be focused on cleaning up our data. This is an initiative we're doing.
All right, cool. Yeah, so we need that fresh start. Strategize. So that's a George W. Word or something. Let's come back a bit. Okay, so I want to talk about this this study here. It's on something called the Fresh Start Effect. And there was a study, and it had to do with retirement savings. And so the idea was they asked people in the study whether they would increase their savings right now, right? The withholdings, like from their pay. They want to do it right now, or they want to do it at some point in the future. And essentially the ones that did it right now, they kind of stayed the same, right? They were like the control group, right? So a certain amount of people, they want to start saving more right away, and they reacted that way regardless. But amongst the group that wanted to start saving in the future, the amount of savings and the frequency that they actually followed through increased dramatically when they worded that call to action with fresh start framing, right? So it's something like what we called before. So if they said, do you want to start on the first day of the year, or in this case, the first day of spring, although we're a little bit late for that, but at least in the spring, any kind of landmark, any date, any temporal marker that indicates a fresh start is going to increase your motivation and ultimately your success, right? So again, it's one of those things are not going well, right? You're gaining a few pounds, whatever. You say, okay, I'm going to start my diet on Monday, and then you have that fresh start, and it increases the chance of success. And that kind of goes for all sorts of things. It's better to start at the beginning of the week, or it's better to start on the first day of the month, these kinds of things. And there's some studies around all that stuff. So anyway, interesting stuff. We'll include some links on these studies in the end if you want to dive into those in a little bit more detail.
I like that phrase, fresh start framing. That's you could probably apply that to a lot of things.
Yeah, of course.
So spring cleaning, what are we going to clean, right? This isn't the let's do this every day. These are the big, broad topics. These are the things that we're going to do on an annual basis. These are the windows, the garage, right? This is the, trimming the trees back for the season. This is what we're focused on. So when we think about this, what are some of the major components we might want to prioritize in our spring cleaning?
Okay. So we're gonna dive into a few of these, but the first thing is we have to go out with the old, right? It's not just the old, right? Although that's a big part of it. But when we're talking about data, it's really any data that is no longer useful, right? So you have this old data that lacks utility in the present, and it's kind of weighing you down.
I think this is a really big one.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
This is a really big one, right? We often have lots of data in lots of systems that we manage, we carry it around with us. And the idea here with our spring cleaning is we have to identify, is this really information that we're using? Is this information that's helping us? Or is this information that's hurting us? One organization, we'll let them be anonymous, told me that they have over 500,000 records in their database that don't do anything with them, that haven't done anything in forever. I said, why is this a big problem? What is the hurt to have them in there? And they said, every time we run a list, we got all this extra weight holding us down. Every time we go to do a project, we have to sort and filter all these extra people out that aren't helpful to us. And it's sort of like that old TV in your garage, right? You move it from the left side of the garage to the right side of the garage, back to the left side of the garage. Every time you need to access something, you're carrying this big heavy weight around. And we know we're never going to use that old TV. It's got the coax plug. It doesn't even work on the internet. Like, this TV is never going to be useful for us. But man, we got to keep this TV for some reason, right? So when we think about our fresh start and we think about decluttering our universe, let's think about all that stuff that we've been holding on to that's really slowing us down. I was at a conference yesterday, and Reggie Henry was the keynote speaker from ASAE. And he said, we've been collecting the same information for the last 20 years. We as an association marketplace, we've been collecting the same information for the last 20 years. And we need to rethink that information. And is it the right information that really serves our members? Are we collecting and maintaining the right information? Or are we holding on to a lot of this clutter that's not serving our modern association, our modern members? I think that's a really important point to consider here.
All right, cool. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, it's really quick. So we're going to declutter our data, right? So again, it's just like your closet. If you don't wear it anymore, you got to get rid of those things. You got to thin things out, right? And doing that in a deliberate way. We have to enforce or revisit our data retention policy. So that's part of kind of falls under governance, but pretty much every association has a policy that the records are to be kept for a certain amount of time, and probably that time is too long. But the other thing is, do you have a policy in place, a procedure in place to actually enforce that, right? So whether maybe you keep your records for 7 years, 10 years, whatever it may be, do you have a policy that goes through on an annual basis or on a quarterly basis, and cleans out records that are past that age? And then strategic alignment. This one is, I think, the most important. We've done webinars on building dashboards and answering key business questions, that move the needle in your business. The same thing here, right? If the data doesn't answer a key business question, it doesn't serve a decision that you need to make, or is connected to specific action, then that's a good candidate for data that you probably can get rid of. And just a tip for this one is, if you do need to archive some of that old data, and when we say out with the old, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is like a hard delete or something like that. This is data that's going to be archived. That data storage is really cheap. So you can get it out of your production systems, move it to an external data lake, data warehouse type repository, and you can then have access to that old data without having it cluttering up your daily life.
A couple extra thoughts on this one, Bill, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
This can cost you money. If you have a lot of old email addresses and you're attempting to deliver content to them on a regular basis, you might be paying to send emails to people that haven't engaged with you in 20 years. Another example, this could cost you money. A friend of mine at an association said he was buying risk insurance, that if his organization gets hacked and all these identities get stolen, he pays for that based on the number of records he has in his system. He said, I'm not paying to have risk software for people that don't even exist anymore in my association. That we need to get those people out. And then I was thinking about this, and my first thought was, we can just take summary level information and save that, and we can get rid of all the details. But then I was like, wait a minute, with all these new AI tools and all these tools that can really leverage this massive quantity of data, I was thinking maybe we don't just archive summary level. Maybe we archive everything. And it's one of those, like, it's not in my way in my closet anymore. It's in my, it's in my storage facility down the road. And it's not cluttering up my garage, or I don't have to move it a lot. But if I ever need to go back to it, I always have access to it. Maybe those Pokemon cards start selling for hot dollars. And I really wish I didn't throw them away in the 90s. And I've got them in my storage facility. That gold's ready for me to mine it.
Yeah. So, yeah, thanks. Good points, Greg. So if anybody has, you know, an anecdote or a story that relates to one of these, I'd love to hear it in the chat. If you have a data retention milestone, if you have a procedure for purging that data, if you're using an external warehouse or some kind of archive, right, that stores data when it reaches a certain age, and if you ever go into that archive to retrieve that data, would love to hear about all of that. So, once we've gone through the process of out with the old, of course, that leaves an opportunity to bring in the new, right? So this is really a great time to think about additional data that you might need. You know, we have conversations with associations all the time, and one of the obstacles that's pretty consistently brought up is they don't have some of the data that they need to execute the analyses that they want, right? They can't answer certain questions because they haven't collected the data. So here we're going to review our collection methods and protocols, right? So this is, when I say methods and protocols, that means like your membership application, your event registrations, right? All the touch points that you have, surveys, right? All the opportunities that you have to collect data from members. So we want to collect only what we need, nothing we don't. We don't want to have a lot of redundancy or really any redundancy in that ideally. That means our systems have to talk to each other, right? So if we collect something on the event reg, we don't want to be collecting it again when I go to purchase a book or a course, right? Create that wish list. If you want to, if this is the year that you make a big move to increase engagement with your young professionals, you better have, you know, the tenure, the age, and the career level of all of those professionals, right? So you know that who is bucketed correctly. We can look at external data, industry data, you know, things like that. Any ideas on external data, Greg?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of external data that you might not have considered in the past. You can think about things like publicly available data. You can think about things like census information. You can think about things like IRS codes we might get. You can think about location analysis, right? Can we tag people by their zip code and correlate this zip code to other things we might know about people? The amount of external data that's now available is huge. You can buy data, right? There's lots of places you can go out and acquire data. It might be potential members. It might be this new topic out there called intent data. It might be all these extra places we can get data that didn't exist when you built your database 5 to 10 years ago, and there was no spot for it. Now we're making space in the garage for all this new stuff. We don't want to just replace it with the old stuff. We want to think about what's the best way to collect that data.
Yes, I think there's a couple of smart things that some of our customers are doing. Like, for example, you know, if you work in a medical association, there are a lot of there are a lot of industry data that are connected to industry IDs, right? So it's like a provider ID, or the acronym is escaping me, but the idea is that there's additional data on those individuals. They have the same ID in your system, so that allows you to join that data to augment the profile information that you already have. Also common, you know, in realtor associations or similar, right? They have the MLS, so I go out and sell a bunch of things that's connected to my to an ID number that's unique to me. So that allows me to join up, you know, that publicly available data with data that's owned by the association, right? So you can create some powerful things that create real value for your members by doing that. All right.
I just realized what this picture is. He threw out his old TV and he's getting a new flat screen.
Yeah, that's right. Right. No coax, no, right. Only HDMI ports on the new TV, right? Or whatever the newest thing is. Okay. So tip here is the new data. Right, so you got rid of the old data because it wasn't connected to insights and action. So obviously the new data has to be, otherwise you should rethink whether or not you need to be bringing that data in. And we will talk a little bit about governance later, and we've talked a lot about governance in other webinars. But if you're wondering, well, who decides whether we should bring in this new data or whether we should get rid of that old data? Well, you have a committee for that, right? You have a data governance committee. And that's really their job, is to make these kinds of decisions on behalf of the association. So if you don't have one of those, that is maybe something else that we could add to the list for your spring.
As you're thinking about in with the new, you don't need to understand your members from 10 years ago. You need to understand your members from today. And the types of questions you have about your members are very different. You might have DEI questions. You might have challenges. One new thing that associations are capturing is data on the members that doesn't move when they change jobs. So something like a cell phone number, right? That might not have been something where it's like, well, we're never going to call them or text them on their cell phone. Why are we collecting it? Well, if Bill moves from one job to another, his cell phone doesn't change. We might be able to say, like, look, a problem we have is tracking members who switch from one company to another. And if we could identify something, we're not going to ask them their social security number. We could ask them something like their cell phone. That's not going to change as they move jobs. We'd be able to track where members go. So really easily, we said, look, we've got new data. We're going to use this data for a purpose. It's going to benefit us in some outcome we're looking for. That's why we're collecting it.
All right. So what are we doing here at the organization, Greg? Tell us about these bins and containers.
We're getting organized. Now, when we get organized, a couple thoughts here. One is, just because you have a container for pinto beans doesn't mean you have to have a container for pinto beans, right? I scoured my kitchen and I didn't have any, but the label on my container said pinto beans. I don't need to use that, right? I think the other point here is I can see what's in these bins, right? This is a choice we made when we picked our picture. I don't necessarily have to look in every bin to easily identify what type of things we're collecting. If I need to know that we have Cheez-Its, I can see them right through the bin. So it's not the idea that, it's organized in boxes that are hidden and everybody can't see what's in it unless you put it in that box, right? We can easily see what's in our data because we've organized it in meaningful ways. And I think this is a really important part of organization.
All right, awesome. So when we get organized, right, and we don't do this every day, but we might do this once a year, right? Every couple of years at least, we have to review our hierarchies, our product hierarchies. So, for example, most types of products have a type, have a category, maybe a subcategory, and then a name. So that'd be kind of typically, maybe 3 to 4 levels of granularity for how you'd want to analyze performance related to those products. So, right. So if you had, say, all of your books or all of your courses in one sort of horizontal, like just they're all the same, it's flat. It's like, okay, we could look at, hey, how are our courses performing, right? But that doesn't really tell you much, right? You need your courses, sorted by topic, right? And then you need, the topics, that roll up to modules or tracks, and then maybe up to certifications or something like that, right? Or, you need your courses rolling up to events or regional events, which might be separate from your, annual events, and maybe you separate the virtual events from the in-person, right? So all different ways of looking at performance, but you have to be able to take the right slice of that. So good example is emails, right? So what do we see most often, Greg, when it comes to emails? How do associations organize their emails?
They don't, is the first answer I'll give you.
Yeah.
The second answer is we create a limited taxonomy. Is this an event? Is this a membership drive? Is this a newsletter? Those are sort of the taxonomies we would commonly see there.
Yeah, right. So we look for a similar kind of hierarchy in the way that we organize our emails, but the most often what I see is just a list of emails, right? A list of subjects, and they're not organized by department or by campaign, certainly, or by subject. And so if you are able to do that, then imagine how much better it's going to be and how much more insightful your analysis of the performance of those emails can be if you sort them into those kinds of containers like you see here. And every email marketing tool gives you the ability to do that. Okay, so we're also going to assess our dimensions. So by this, it means that all of the things that we use to describe, right? So all the ways that we want to slice and dice our data. So we want to slice and dice by member type, by certification status or region, or if it's organizations, maybe it's the staff size or the revenue size, et cetera. And so all of those dimensions are important for our analysis. So we want to make sure that we're being purposeful. And those are the things that we're really monitoring for completeness and accuracy and all of that. Then we want to update our tags and our taxonomy, right, kind of across the association. So, taxonomy is think of it like it's related to a hierarchy, but it's the way that we collect information about all of the activities that happen. So if I have my courses tagged, if I have my content tagged, if I have my products tagged, right, then that allows me to get information about your preferences and your interests from all of the different activities that you take part in with the association.
Allison here has a great comment. It's like a big bucket of commingled Legos. There's actually, I'm a Lego nerd, so there's actually a term in the Lego industry called knolling. I'll drop a link in the chat there. Take a look at it. Knolling is the idea that you obsessive compulsively organize every Lego before you put them together in size, color, shape, and orientation. And it makes some really cool pictures, right? And I love this idea. Like, are you a hunter when you build Legos, right? You have a big pile and you just sort of like look for 20 minutes to find that one piece, or it's organized and categorized, right? You've taken the time. It's really satisfying to organize every piece in the right order. You're looking for that, 1x4. It's right here in the list of 1x4s. You can easily grab it. It makes building so much more satisfying because it's not a hunt for the piece. It's a creative exploration of building, and it changes the way you approach the task.
Sorry, how do you spell that?
Knolling? It's
yeah.
Spelled the way you think it's spelled.
Okay. The way you think it's spelled.
K-N-O-L-L-I-N-G. Knolling. The process of arranging related objects in parallel 90-degree angles in colors and shapes and sizes.
All right.
Fantastic. Take a look at some of these pictures. Like, this is almost as satisfying as building it, is the organization. Now, imagine if we considered data cleanup as satisfying as knolling our Legos. Like, how much more pleasure will we get out of that process?
All right. So you guys have seen the Lego house picture. We've used that, right? How to communicate with data. You start with the pile of all the multicolored Legos. You go to the sorted by color, sorted by shape, right? And then ultimately we get the house, right? Which is your communication. All right. So getting organized. Just remember, the taxonomy is the organization, and the metadata, right, is what describes that information, right? So we have our sections, right, in our hierarchy or in our taxonomy, and then we have all of this metadata that helps us to categorize it because it's descriptive in nature. Okay.
All right, it wouldn't be an A2 webinar with Bill if the 5 Ps weren't represented. Bill, tell us all about the 5 Ps, and we'll give you some fresh perspective on the 5 Ps today.
All right, here we go. People that have joined us before, you've obviously seen these a few times. These are the 5 Ps of data governance, and we do want to refresh all of this, right? So, we talked a lot about how difficult it is to kind of get the buy-in and get participation and have a big and complex and fully formed data governance team and policy and all of that. So we have to revisit that once a year. We have to refresh things. It's probably not the sort of thing that we can do, daily for sure, or not, probably not weekly or even monthly, but at least annually we should be refreshing things like assigning and refining our roles and responsibilities. So that means like who's responsible for which data, right? And what are the recommended and what are the prohibited uses of that data, things like that. We have a data governance policy, right, which covers things like what's the process for deciding which data is in and which data is out. It maybe has some procedures around security, around usage of data, privacy, things like that, right? So all of those things are included in our policy. So we're going to update those as needed. This is usually like minor tweaks, right? We're not rewriting the whole thing on an annual basis by any means. But then goals and priorities, right? So remember that, so DG is it's a continuous improvement, right? Just like data quality. So we're not going to do everything at once. We're going to do just the bare minimum in the first year, and then we're going to incrementally add on from that, right? So each year when we go back and revisit, we're going to have a refreshed goal of a refreshed list of goals and priorities that we're going to address in the coming year.
I want to redefine two of these for you. The first one you might know, but let's just talk about it, is process, right? Process is where we decide what data we collect and why we collect it. And this is not an IT decision. IT is involved in this decision, but the end business users are the ones we want to talk to, right? The marketing department who sends the emails, they're the ones we want to talk to about the taxonomy. Now, maybe we help them with some recommendations on taxonomy. We tell them what our marketing tool allows. Is it 2 tiers or 7 tiers? How do we tag things? Can we tag them with multiple categories, or do we have to pick one? So IT supports it, but the end business users themselves are the ones who define those answers in our process. People, I might have understood process, but I didn't get this one. I thought persons was a person. I thought people was Bill, right? Bill is our person who does this. And our smart friend, Kristen, she helped me understand this better. She said ownership isn't a name, right? The people isn't Bill. The people is a title. It's a role in the organization. It's a department. When that person leaves and moves to another organization, we don't want that process to fail because that person's no longer there. Or if that person goes on vacation, we don't want that thing not to happen for 6 months until they come back. We want someone else in the department to be able to take over. So when we think about people, don't think about a person with a proper noun name. Think about a person with a title, a department, maybe a section, maybe multiple people in that who are trained on how to do it, so it doesn't fall through when that one person's not around.
All right. Yeah. So again, we're not gonna really beat a dead horse anymore when it comes to governance. We know that's important. But it's difficult, right? It's tough to do, and so I want to offer this as a tip. If even establishing a governance committee, much less getting them to meet and make important decisions, is a challenge, for your organization. Here's something that we've tried and had some success with. It's a data governance survey, and you could send this to. In some cases, it could be for all staff, or it could at least be to a group of key stakeholders, and you collect information that you would otherwise cover in a governance committee meeting. And you can do that either leading up to the meeting and spend some time, discussing rather than collecting that data, or you can sometimes do it even in lieu of a meeting if it's a real challenge, right, to get participation. This is an alternative, so give that a shot.
Bill, do I have to build my own data governance survey?
You don't. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, we do have a template that you can use if you want to shoot us an email. Would love to send you that. And this one is really for that initial fact finding around governance, right? So you're building that initial list of goals and priorities and procedures. You would have to modify in the future years after your initial fresh start, to just refine and revisit, right? But for year one, this is going to be perfect to lead up to that first committee meeting. Yeah, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
I dropped my email in the chat there. If you want a copy of it, just shoot me an email and say, hey, can you give me a copy of that survey? Include a picture of your coolest Lego build, and I will send it right on over.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So what about tools?
Tools is a really tough one, and we picked a couple tools here. You might see our sort of site there, right, where we might be going out and actually cutting the grass. You might see our push mower, right, old school there, or you might see this riding mower. Now, I'm not saying if you have the scythe or the push mower, it's the wrong tool for the job. You got to look at your backyard and see, is this tool really meeting our needs? We don't just need to replace it for the sake of replacing it. So what I would recommend is look at your tools, inventory all the things you do, all the things you have, and identify, is this the right tool for me? Do I need something better out there? Do I need to stop by the hardware store and see what's available? Just because your tool does the job and meets your needs doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking around for what else is available in the marketplace, talking to your friends. How do you do this? What tools do you use for this? Technology changes really fast these days. So just being aware of what's available in the marketplace can help you. Maybe you're not changing your tool today, but you want to know, 2 or 3 years from now, if we change, what might be available. I would say take a look at your tools, inventory them, see if they still meet your needs, and see if there's challenges that have popped up where maybe a new tool can address it. Technology is changing really fast these days. There's a lot of new tools out there to help you do all this stuff, help you manage your data, clean it up, dedupe it. There's a system in there for all of that stuff.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. So so Greg and I had a good conversation about this as we were, preparing for today's talk. And, honestly, most often, we're talking with associations, and it's kind of on the other side of this coin, right? There's kind of an emotional state, right? Where you hate that that email tool, or maybe it's your AMS, and you really feel like that's the root of your problems, and you switch to something new, and that's going to solve everything. I know no one on this call has felt that way, but probably people that have, right? And so very often we're like, look, take a step back. If maybe you retrain, maybe you maybe you kind of reevaluate and thinking about the time and effort and the expense to change to something new. Is that really something that you want to do, right? And so that's pretty good advice. But the other side of that is, as Greg said, just because something you're content with it, it's working, it's doing okay, doesn't mean that there isn't something better. And in particular for some of the, I say, things that are outside of your AMS, right? Some of the kind of like that secondary level of tools in your ecosystem. Some of those can be replaced without that significant time and effort. And of course, there's always net new tools, right, that you can add to the mix, right? There are a lot of new tools for engagement, with members, right? Whether it be through mobile or whether it be through surveys, micro surveys, things like that. Those are things that you can add, and yes, it adds a little bit of complexity, but the return that you get on that is going to be really good, right? You don't want to be swinging the scythe anymore. You want to drive the John Deere in some cases. Okay, right. So pro tip there, pretty simple one, right? Technology is changing. We want to make sure that we're remaining open to that, right? So take that demo, right? Even if you don't need a new learning management system, maybe take a look at what's going on, right? Maybe take a look at that new engagement platform that somebody calls you about. So anyway, just a little tip there. All right, and then so as we start talking about moving away from the fresh start, right? This big annual process to something that happens every day. We have to plan, right? So spring cleaning is about tackling all those few big ticket items, but we can't just drop everything and then wait again until next spring, right? So we have to set smaller, more achievable goals, and then we have to allocate time and resources to attack those, right, Greg?
This is huge, right? They who fail to plan to fail. So we want to make sure we're planning here. And I think one important part of the plan that can be forgotten is when we think about our plan, we often think about the technology, the tactical, we think about the fields and the cleanup and the tools we're going to use. But sometimes we forget that psychological part. We forget this is a human exercise, right? We have to get a project plan that's going to get people motivated. It's going to get them excited. We got to give them reasons to do this. We can't run this just purely as an IT project. We have to think about this as a motivational project. We have to think about this as an organizational-wide project where we're striving to achieve a goal for some really cool reason. That sounds like a way more fun project to be a part of than cleaning up your data and sitting there merging stuff together all day.
All right, cool, thanks. Hey, this is the easiest tip of the day. Set time blocks to work on this stuff, right? If you do that, much more likely to follow through on that. So it's about allocating the time and the resources to something important. It doesn't have to be a lot. Anything is better than nothing. Okay, so another quick study here. As we talk a lot about fresh starts, there are some cases where fresh start is not as helpful, right? So Freakonomics has a radio, it's a podcast, and one of the topics they talked about was about trades in baseball, because it's like a really good proxy. It's a natural experiment for for this fresh start phenomenon that we've been talking about. And so if I'm in the American League and I get traded to another American League team, I kind of just everything continues as it was, right? But if I get traded from an American League team to a National League team or vice versa, then my batting average gets reset back to zero. So I effectively get a fresh start. So they found out something really interesting is that if my batting average was below the league average, then when I transferred, when I got a fresh start and I was traded to a new team in the other league, my batting average increased by 3.8%. Right. So anyone have a guess what happened if I was above the league average? Right. If I was above the league average, I actually decreased. So bottom line here is a fresh start is really good for cases where things are not going great, right? Where you're failing essentially, right? And we already established that most of us are failing when it comes to big progress on data quality. So fresh start is probably a great idea for that, but it doesn't work for everything. If you have things that are going well, then we can just keep it rolling. Okay. So here's, we got about 15 minutes left. So here's another study, and this is kind of a mouthful here, right? So anticipated temporal goals undermine motivation. All right, what does that mean?
Such a Bill term right there.
Yeah, what does that mean in English?
I don't know what that means.
Okay, so here's what it means, right? Imagine, so what do we all do if we're going to start an exercise program, right? Or we're going to start a diet. We procrastinate. Thank you, Tracy, right? If I'm going to start a diet on Monday, right? But my fresh start is on Monday. What am I going to do between now and then is I'm going to procrastinate, right? I'm going to eat a lot, right? Or if I'm going to start my savings program in January, right? So I'm going to probably spend a lot, between now and the end of the year, right? Have big holiday party or something, right? And so the idea is that the psychology behind that is we separate our current self, right, or our organization from our future self or organization. And we imagine that our future self is way more responsible and productive than the current one. And so that kind of justifies this procrastination that Tracy's talking about. So reality is that it doesn't really work out that way. Right? My future self is always more productive, of course. Reality is that so what happens is we slack off and we eat more or whatever in anticipation of starting the diet, and then our future self isn't as great as we thought they were going to be, and so we fail to compensate for that. So point is, we have this goal. The idea that we know we have a fresh start coming up can undermine our motivation right now, right? So we have to do things to mitigate that, right? And so here we're going to talk about some things that we can do every day, or almost every day.
Yeah, so we can't always wait till spring, right? We have to maintain some level of effort throughout the year. We're going to go through a quick tips on things that you might do throughout the year. Maybe not daily, maybe monthly, weekly, quarterly. I don't know, but you should be finding time to do all these things. And we're going to approach these from a smart perspective. So let's roll through some of these. And I think our first one here is going to be dupes. I want to give you a tip. Finding dupes isn't bad. If you have dupes in your system, it means you have new data. It means you're growing your database. It means you're expanding. It means you're getting potential new contacts in your system. So cleaning up your dupes is a continual process. Maybe we take a small amount of time for each core system and we go clean up the dupes. Maybe we automate this process. There's a lot of tools out there that will identify our duplicates. It'll do a confidence score. It'll match things up for us. But we've got our friend here is bailing water out of their boat. And what you can't see is there's a hole in the bottom of this boat. If we just filled up our bucket and kept dumping water out, we'd never actually finish the task. And this is sort of what we feel like when we're cleaning up dupes, right? There's just more duplicates all the time. It's a never-ending problem. But what if we could identify the root cause of our duplicates and maybe not eliminate it, but maybe plug that hole, right? It's not where you don't have no water coming in. It's we have less water coming in. So a really good idea here is identify why your boat is leaking and try and fix or plug that hole. So I'll give you a perfect example. You all registered for our webinar today. Katrina's going to take you and dump you into our database, and half of you changed the way you spell your name, or you used a different email address. You used your Gmail address this time, and you're going to create a ton of dupes in our system. A bunch of you registered with your association acronym instead of the full name spelled out. You're going to create more dupes in my system. So what we do is before we import the data, we just do a quick scan of it. And we say, hey, if this is a Gmail address, we clean it up. We actually changed on our form. It says use your business address. Hopefully you use less Gmails. Or if you use an acronym, we eyeball it and we try and identify who you are so we don't create more dupes. So the goal here is to minimize the problem, but it's never going to completely go away. So we're always going to be just continuously working on that challenge.
There we go. Spend more time plugging the hole instead of bailing the water, right? All right, Greg, what tell us about the field of the week. Kristen is like um, the person behind the curtain here, right? She's behind a lot of our tips here. So we said we'd give you credit. So Kristen Berry, everyone, this is her idea.
Yeah, so this was a really smart idea. It was sort of a field of the week, is a focus. Everybody inside the entire organization is going to be focused on this field for this week, right? It's a team effort. We're all going to get onto it. It's got a start date. It's got an end date. It's a short-term project. We've got some internal campaign around it. We're going to celebrate. We're going to promote our win. But this week, everybody's focused on phone numbers. Everybody's focused on emails. Everybody's focused on making sure we have the right member count in the organizational members, right? This is something that, no worries, Lance, we'll clean it up for you. This is something that we can actually focus on, and we can make this fun. This can be a fun little campaign inside of our organization. And the goal here is it's not one department focusing on this, it's everybody's focusing on this. Every department sort of has a mission-driven idea that this is what we're going to work on this specific week.
All right. So if we're going to do a field of the week or something like that, we're talking about reducing the scope and shortening the time around that. So, if you want to reduce that scope, a good way to do that is to start with the subset of your data or a subset of your members, right? So the field of the week is a good example of a subset of your data, but you might look at we're gonna clean up all the data related to registrants for a certain event or something like that. Something that's really important. So the point is we can't tackle everything at once. Something that's achievable, something that's kind of boxed in, so that we can really measure progress on that and then move on to the next thing. Okay, merge and match, right? So we found our duplicates, and we won't spend a long time on this one because it's kind of very closely related to finding your dupes. So usually we're going to want to merge them and not delete. But a couple of tips on this is use your source systems, right? They have, most of them have capabilities for finding duplicates, and you can assign this, again, with your data governance committee to those systems and data owners, right, to the individual departments. There's something called fuzzy matching, which we've talked about before. This is, if there's duplicate customer IDs, that's really easy to spot, right? If there's duplicates in other ways, like John and Jonathan or Bill and William, things like that, those are harder to find. But there is something called fuzzy matching that can help you do that. That one you probably would need the help of a developer or a vendor to help you with. Consider a tool or service. There are tools that are good at this, and the way they work is they give you this idea of confidence scores, right? So matching is never going to be an exact science. So you get a confidence score. And essentially, if the confidence is really high, right, then it's those are duplicates, and you have to merge them. If it's really low, then they're unique, right? And you're not going to take action on those. The ones in the middle are going to require some curation, some kind of human intervention. And so it can get big and cumbersome if you wait a long time to do this. But if you establish a routine of doing it on a regular basis, then you can make some progress on this. And Greg, what are directional insights? You remember? Talked about this before.
I think a directional insight is something that changes longitudinally over time.
Yeah. So directional insights are, I just think about a bar chart, right? The bars get a little bit bigger, and you don't need to know the exact numbers, but you can tell that something is increasing or decreasing over time is because the size of the bars convey this directionality, right? So you can see directionally that things are getting better. You can see directionally that things are going worse. And very often in your analyses, it's really the directional insight that you want. And a few dupes here and there aren't going to deter that very much. So that's one way of saying that it's not to say that we don't want you to merge and match. We don't want you to find those duplicates, but it's not the end of the world if you still have a lot, as most of us do.
Speaking about bar charts,
there you go.
Augment key dimensions. This is an important one, but first we have to understand what is a dimension. This is kind of a wonky term the analysts use. What's a dimension, Bill?
A dimension is something that you slice and dice your data by, right? So we talked about the the dimensional model before, right? So the dimensional model has facts. Those are like things you do. They're like verbs, like you register, you renew, or you join, right? Those kinds of things. And then the dimensions are things that we know about you, right? Those are the ways that you describe or you slice and dice, right? It's things like your member type. Very good example is your job title versus your functional role, right? Job title is going to be a free text field, and it's like, it could be anything really. Functional role is something that is probably a drop-down menu, and it can tell me something pretty specific about what you do for your company, right? That I can slice and dice my registration data by, my purchase data by, my membership data by, things like that.
So if we're focused on out with the old and in with the new, we can also rethink our dimensions. Again, let's go back to our process. We're going to go interview our stakeholders and our users, and we're going to talk to them about how they do stuff or how they would like to do stuff. Let's go interview our marketing team. How do you send out emails now? How do you tag and target people with content? How would you like to do that? Does our data today support that? Could our data tomorrow support that? Can we start collecting that data? And Bill talked about this idea of job title versus functional role. And we've been collecting job titles as a text field for years. That's okay. Our friends over in IT might recommend that we can write a stored procedure, and it can pick up, are you the marketing manager, the director of marketing? Are you a project support specialist, email expert, right? We can merge all these together in our stored procedure and update our functional role based on the idea that you're in marketing. So just because you don't have it doesn't mean we can't go get it. And it doesn't have to be something that the person directly tells you. A dimension could be an observed dimension. It could be something you're calculating, like an engagement score. It could be the lack of activity. All these things are different dimensions that you could use. So just be smart about the dimensions you're capturing and how you're using them. Again, we're not trying to understand our members from 10 years ago. We're trying to understand our members today and where they're headed. And there's a lot of new dimensions out there that we might not have leveraged in the past that you're going to want to leverage in the future.
All right. So really quick, this is actually our last point here, so we can spend a second on here. So Greg, when we were talking about this, one of the things I remember is you said something really smart, which is you don't always have to ask the exact question that you want the answer to, right? I don't think I phrased that exactly right, but tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, a lot of times obviously you would never do this, but we get these emails, hey, log in and update your profile. We need to know your address so we can send you a physical bill in the mail. And that's probably not the best way to get that information. We talked about this in our survey webinar a while ago. You don't have to ask the direct question you're trying to get an answer to. You can sort of sneak up on it from the side. I'll give you an example. Hey, we have a new t-shirt design for our association, and we wanted to send all of you a free t-shirt in the mail. Just tell us what your address is and your t-shirt size, and you'll get a free t-shirt in the mail from us. I just got everybody to update their address. Like, what a smart way to do that. I was at a conference once, and the keynote speaker said, hey, here's my cell phone number, and if you text me, I'll give you a code to download my book for free. He just got everybody in the whole audience to tell him his cell phone number. Like, what a smart way to do that. He didn't say, hey, if you all give me my cell phone number, I'll market my products and services to you, right? That's not what he said. He said, hey, if you want a free book, just text me and I'll send you a code for it. So be smart about how you're asking these questions. We don't always have to run up and scare the person we're asking the question to. We can sort of sneak up and ask them a parallel question that gives us the answer we're looking for.
All right. So go beyond the profile, think backwards from the actions that you want to take to the data that you're collecting. And so focus on those things, right? You don't need to augment all the dimensions, just the ones that are really important. Okay. So key takeaways. We want to leverage that fresh start, right? We want to take advantage of the spring or the new year or the new fiscal year or some kind of landmark, some kind of date, right, that we can use to anchor things and to drive our participation, right? And the fresh start can really be every year until things are going well enough that it becomes a distraction to have that fresh start each time. Now we're going to use ongoing small goals to counter that reduced motivation that we talked about, right? At the end of the year, we know a fresh start is coming, but we still need to perform, right, for the balance of that year. So field of the week is a great way to do that. Designated months to work on a particular type of data, like your events data or something like that, is also a really great way to do it as well.
I think not a technology product is key here, right? Think about our messaging. When we write that email to the team, when we do the kickoff meeting, how do we make this not a technology project? How do we make this a fun project? If you take a little bit of extra time at the front end to spice things up, to make it exciting, to make it interesting for people, it's going to be a lot easier process. People are going to be more willing to do it. We're going to talk about the end goals, not just the fact that we have to do all this data cleanup. So while it is a technology project, don't project management it that way. Think about the psychology, think about the strategies behind the scenes, think about making it fun for people. You'll be a lot more successful. It's not one person's job. This is everybody's job. It's not the IT team's job. It's not the membership's job. It's the organization's job. When we bring everybody in together, we achieve a lot more. We can, do the field of the week. We can get everybody in and pitch up and, help clean up the yard, and everybody participates and we're good to go, right? Maybe you've done like the clean up the stream and everybody in the neighborhood goes down to the stream and cleans it up. That's way easier than one person down there with a trash bag all day. So make it a team effort, make it a group project.
All right, connected to action. So all this stuff about data in, data out, all those things have to relate to the actions that you want to take.
And last tip is strive for progress, not perfection. You're never going to finish your data cleanup and it's going to be all shiny and perfect. There's always going to be challenges. But when we think about our future goals, we get rid of all the stuff we don't need to worry about. And we really think about these are the critical fields we need to use because we're going to use them in these ways. And having good, clean, accessible data on those specific things is really going to be our goal. That's where we can make the biggest bang for our buck. We're never going to get every field 100% clean. But if we can focus and prioritize the most important things, we can make a big difference and we can make a difference in our outcomes. That's really what we want to have here. If we think about this, it's not about running the report and seeing where everything's filled out and clean. It's thinking about, did our outcomes improve? That's really where we want to focus our efforts on data governance.
All right. Here are a couple of resources that we recommend. Right, so we had a How to Overcome Fear of Dirty Data. That was a webinar. Of course, our ultimate guide to data governance ebook, and then the lightweight framework for data strategy. Right, so we didn't talk a lot about strategy, but all of this is key to it. That was from a webinar just recently. And of course, if you want to get that data governance survey template, you can email Greg and include your Lego pictures there. At the bottom, those are a couple of the studies that we reviewed for the Fresh Start and any other study today. So again, we're going to be back at it May 17th, 3 p.m. Hopefully we'll see some of you there. Thanks a lot for all of your time and attention today, and we'll talk to you all soon.